Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents England's Dreaming, The Sex Pistols and Punk Rock by Jon Savage, narrated by Chris Macdonnell. Part 1. 1. In the city we can change our identities at will, as Dickens triumphantly proved over and over again in his fiction. Its discontinuity favours both instant heroes and instant villains impartially. The gaudy, theatrical nature of city life tends constantly to melodrama. Jonathan Raban, Soft City, 1974. We wander through London, who knows what we may find? Lionel Bart, It's a Fine Life, from Oliver, 1960. It is the early 70s. All the participants of what will be called punk are alive, but few of them know each other. They will come together during 1976 and 1977 in a network of relationships as complicated as the rabbit-warren London slums of Dickens' novels. The other beginnings of punk, the musical texts, vanguard manifestos, pulp fictions, already exist. But first we need the location, the vacant space where, like the buddleia on the still plentiful bomb sites, these flowers can bloom. That space is a small, oddly shaped shop at 430 King's Road at World's End. The extended ground floor is a 4-story late Victorian house. It was cheaply converted in the early years of the century. An iron pillar in the middle of the floor supports the roof. The only natural light comes from the front window. There is no inside toilet. It stands at a commanding position at the end of a row of similar, slightly larger shops. Directly to the east is the local Conservative Association. The building's changes of function illustrate the social shifts within this marginal area, a microcosm of what Malcolm McLaren has called the human architecture of the city. The corner on which it stands is the first major deviation in the King's Road. World's End itself is named after a large pub that stands nearby. This name in turn derives not from the apocalypse, but from the fact that, at the time when it was built, in the 18th century, it was the last house on the outskirts of the city, a boundary moving inexorably westwards from the World's End of Congreve, near Markham Square. During the second half of the 19th century, this area of dead roads became associated with Cremorne Gardens, a stretch of land bounded by Lots Road in the southwest and the World's End in the northeast. Initially fashionable, the gardens degenerated, as public urban spaces will, into harbours of prostitution and low-life of all types, and were closed in 1877. During the last 2 Victorian decades, World's End became a poor area, creating an atmosphere which, despite gentrification, lingers in the World's End estate of 70s tower blocks. After the First World War, 430 King's Road was occupied by Joseph Thorne, who carried on a pawnbroking business there for over 30 years. By the early 1950s, it had become a cafe run by Mrs. Ida Docker. The World's End was still a down-at-heel area belonging to the poor, the bohemians, the transients of Pamela Hansford Johnson's 1937 novel World's End, whom Evelyn Waugh described, reviewing in Graham Greene's Night and Day magazine, as people economically, politically, socially, theologically in a mess. As the upper reaches of the King's Road became fashionable in the mid-1950s, boutiques, coffee bars, and other meeting places slowly spread down the street's eastern stretches. As a part of this process, number 430 ceased to be a shop that served only its immediate locality. For a time it was a yacht agent's, then the premises of a motor scooter dealer called Stanley G. Raper. In the winter of 1967, when Michael Rainey moved Hung On You from its previous site on Chelsea Green, it became chic. Hung On You is a good example of the social mix that fueled the synthesis of fashion, music and politics which has become London's principal export to the world. Along with David Milinarik, Tara Brown, immortalized in the Beatles' A Day in the Life, and Christopher Gibbs, Michael Rainey had been one of the original aristocratic Chelsea stylists, an elite based not on breeding or manners, but on pop values like style and glamour. By the mid-1960s, the English music and culture industries were increasing exponentially, a process officially marked by the Beatles' investiture as MBEs in October 1965. Pop groups like the Beatles, the Animals, and the Rolling Stones, with roots ranging from the suburban to the truly poor, were not only becoming rich and famous, but the new aristocracy. In John Lennon's phrase, the kings of the jungle. They had few better role models than the Chelsea dandies, whose taste for exotica was already well developed. One can see the clothes on the Beatles or the Rolling Stones in early 1966, narrowly cut, high double-breasted suits in velvet or stripes, worn with garish, hand-painted 40s ties or 30s crêpe de chine scarves. This was the pop modernism of the mid-1960s on the cusp of hippie collage. As this style spread, it was principally sold in Carnaby Street or on the Portobello Road. Too remote, the World's End didn't directly profit from the bonanza. Although other shops like Granny Takes a Trip had opened in 1966, the corner was not a mass-market thoroughfare, but a place for drugs, eccentricity, or special pilgrimages. Michael Rainey closed Hung on You early in 1969. He had helped to originate the idea of multiple identity in fashion, of clothes worn not in a uniformity of caste or taste, but in a riotous confusion of colours, eras, and nationalities. But the next occupants of 430 took the idea of fun clothes to a sickly conclusion. Trevor Miles had supplied Hung on You with caftans. More recently, he had made waistcoats for Tommy Roberts' Kleptomania. They decided to set up a shop together, with a new name taken from an underground movie title. Mr. Freedom was like a gigantic playpen. Once inside the Ice Cream Sundae deco frontage, customers were greeted by a giant stuffed gorilla dyed fun fur blue. While a revolving silver globe in the ceiling gave an authentic palais feel, they could buy jars of sweets from the counters with the inset televisions twinkling away. Influenced by the 1950s, the clothes were trivial, garish, and fantastic, pastiching the past 30 years of comic strip Hollywood vulgar. I did applique lightning bolts, long T-shirt dresses with rockets coming up them, Mickey Mouse T-shirts and all that, says Miles. Other items included Lucy Mabel Atwell-style print dresses, appliques with catchphrases like "Slip it to me" and "Pow," worn by deliberately ugly models, Superman jackets and fake leopard skin everywhere. From the outset, the shop was a success. "I've never seen so much publicity on anything," muses Miles. "There was nothing else for them to grab onto. It was all very, very groovy." This was one source of a pervasive mood in early 70s pop culture, a mixture of camp and infantilism, triggered by the hippies' celebration of childhood as the ideal state. Evocations of the 30s environment characteristic of the baby boomer childhood, a process which would peak with that palace of fun, Bieber's Superstore, went hand in hand with the fine art codification in 1968 of 30 styles under the term Art Deco. As the sheer drive of pop modernism faltered, the era of decade-style revivals began. Style replaced content. Clothing became costume. Pop cult phenomena like Mr. Freedom shook loose individual items from time reference like the 30s or the 50s and ran wild with the past like a child in an antique shop. To aesthetes like Nick Cohn, this cheerful plunder was total anathema. For the moment, fun reigns supreme. At middle-aged joint-smoking parties, balding fatties come on as Johnny Weissmuller, and their wives play Rita Hayworth. It is not a pretty sight. For Miles, this total visibility brought rather more pressing problems, the rip-off. It happened with his most celebrated design, the Star T-shirt, instantly copied by the established rag trade, which then flooded the market with cheap imitations. This is a perennial problem for the successful yet small entrepreneur. Tommy Roberts went for broke, opening a bigger, better shop at the bottom.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?